Welcome to How to Play MonsterCon. I'm Blob, and I'm here to explain the very basics of how to get started with this trading card game. At its very core, MonsterCon is a game where two players draw from a deck of cards to place them onto a field, summoning monsters to do battle and casting spells. The ultimate goal is to bring the life totals of other players to 0. Let's start by examining what makes up a MonsterCon card. This is a monster card, as indicated by the type lines at the bottom left of the frame. Two important aspects of a monster are its mana cost and its attack stat. The mana cost is how many resources you need to expend to play a monster, and the attack stat determines its battle strength. Next, we have the name and artwork of the card. They let you know what kind of neat critter you're summoning. Lastly is the rules text box. This tells you what the card does as plainly as it can. Moving on, we have spells, and as you can see, a lot of the elements stay the same. There are lots of different kinds of spells. Normal spells do their thing and go to the grave afterwards. Aura and shield spells stay on the field and provide their own benefits. Equip spells are directly attached to monsters and also give a benefit. Fast spells can be played just like normal spells, or in response to any action any player takes. Lastly, we have leaders and domains. Each player starts the game with one leader and one domain. Leaders are often great characters that help lead the charge against your opponents, while domains provide unique benefits and incentives for your deck. Once players have a deck made with a total of 40 monsters and spells and a leader domain pair, they'll place those cards in their respective zones on the field. Decide who goes first however you want. You can try playing rock, paper, scissors, rolling some dice, or flipping coins. Each player sets their life total to 20, draws 4 cards from their main deck, and puts the bottom card of their deck in the reserve zone face up. Now, ready to begin. Depending on what leaders or domains each player has chosen, there might be a start effect to apply. Now it's time to talk about turn structure. Each turn has 3 steps: the draw step, the action step, and the end step. Each draw step begins with the turn player drawing cards. The player going first draws 1 card to begin with, but from then on, each player will draw 2 cards during their own draw step. Next, they can do one of 3 things. They can do nothing and continue on to the action step. They can take a card from their hand and place it into the reserve zone, or they can take a card from the reserve zone and put it into their hand. Afterwards, it's on to the action step. The turn player starts their action step with 0 mana. However, they get 1 more mana for each card in their reserve zone. As more cards are placed into the reserve zone, you'll start each action step with more mana. This mana resets each new turn, so be sure to use as much as you can before your next turn. Once mana is set, it's on to the meat of the game. During the action step, the turn player can take a myriad of actions. They can play cards by paying costs such as mana. Notably, most monsters have summoning sickness. While they'll still be able to block, they can't attack until your next turn. When a monster is able to attack, you send them directly after a player. If that blocking player has a monster or shield in the same or adjacent column, they can have that card intercept by blocking. Cards can only attack or block once a turn. However, some effects give additional attacks or blocks, and others will make monsters attack regardless of their condition. When 2 monsters clash, the one with higher attack survives and the lower attack monster dies. If the 2 monsters have the same attack stat, both die. If the attacking monster is not blocked, it deals damage equal to its attack stat to the blocking player. Some effects can also deal damage to monsters, and the result is fairly similar to how battling works. If the effect damage is the same or greater than the monster's attack, the monster is destroyed. But if the effect damage is lower than the monster's attack, the effect does nothing. Next, you can activate effects of cards on your field. Notion that the effect is being activated, then resolve it as best you can. Unless stated otherwise, activate effects are only once a turn. Don't forget that leaders and domains can also have activate effects. Lastly, some cards have a flip cost. Regardless of the flip cost, this means you can put the card face down by paying 2 mana. On a later turn, you play it by paying its alternate flip cost instead of its normal mana cost. Once the turn player is done taking actions or wants to end their turn, they move on to the end step. The end step is when some cards and effects can expire. Also, if you have more than 6 cards in hand, you discard until you just have 6. After the end step, it goes over to the next player's turn, starting with their draw step. This continues until a player wins by bringing their opponent to 0 life, or if their opponents try drawing a card when they have 0 cards left in their deck. There are just a few more things for us to cover. If all your monster zones are filled and you want to play a new monster, you can do so by sending an existing monster to the grave. Domain charge is a unique resource tied to domains. Different domains will gain and utilize this charge in unique ways. Be sure to find one that fits your playstyle. Some leaders are capable of being treated like monsters. This gives them all the capabilities you expect, like attacking, being equipped, and being buffed up. However, since they are still leaders, there are some caveats. First, they can't be moved from the leader zone, except by very specific effects that call out leaders. This means they can't be destroyed by battles, effects, or moved around by things like swap or bounce. Second, the leader zone is considered to be adjacent to all zones on the field. That means there are powerful synergies to take advantage of, but they're vulnerable to similar effects as well. Before we go, I want to remind you about the reserve zone. You might think that this is just where you put cards away as fuel to play other cards. However, cards in the reserve zone are still a resource you can use. Remember, during the draw step, you have the choice of putting a card in the reserve zone, or taking a card from your reserve zone and putting it in your hand. This is perfect for when you pitched high cost cards you weren't able to play early in the game, but now have the available resources to. And also, there are actually some effects that are dependent on having cards in your reserve zone. Phew, that's everything you need to know about the basics of MonsterCon. If you ever need to review the rules, be sure to check these timestamps. Or you can look in the description for the rules manual as well as an FAQ. Anyway, that's all I've got for you for now. I hope you'll enjoy everything MonsterCon has to offer. Adios!